Wei Chen stood in the center of his apartment, a space so deliberately minimal it bordered on ascetic. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, walls the color of forgotten promises. The only photograph hung above a second-hand desk, his mother's face caught mid-laugh, her hand reaching toward the camera 23 years ago. The image had faded to sepia at the edges, but her eyes remained sharp, watchful. His phone vibrated against the desk surface, the sound amplified by the empty room. The family group chat lit up with Linda's message, each word precisely calibrated to sound inclusive while functioning as a command. Dad's 70th. Mandatory attendance. Lotus Garden Estate. Black tie. Don't embarrass us. Wei read it 3 times, each pass revealing new layers of dismissal. The exclamation points were weapons. Mandatory was a leash. Don't embarrass us assumed he already had, would again, couldn't help himself. He opened his closet, 3 shirts arranged by frequency of wear, 2 pairs of pants that had survived a decade, 1 blazer whose cuffs had frayed past respectability into something approaching honesty. His fingers hovered over the phone's keyboard. The family chat scrolled with responses, Marcus promising to bring champagne, Chelsea asking about the dress code, Nathan mentioning his new Neuralink watch that cost more than Wei's annual grocery budget. Wei typed 4 words. Deleted them, typed 3 more, settled on simplicity. I'll be there. Linda's reaction came immediately. A thumbs up emoji. Nothing more. The chat moved on as if he'd never spoken. Wei set the phone down and returned to his book, a philosophy text printed on actual paper, the kind you could smell. His apartment's smart surfaces stayed dark. No holographic displays, no ambient mood lighting that shifted with biometric feedback, none of the connected home features that transformed living spaces into status broadcasts. His neighbors' apartments pulsed with soft blue light, their walls transparent to social feeds, their lives on permanent display. Wei's windows remained opaque, the memory surfaced without permission. As it always did when Linda issued commands disguised as invitations. 20 years ago, standing in his father's office on the 47th floor of the Chin Tower, watching the city sprawl below like circuitry. His father behind the desk, Linda to his right already calculating angles, Marcus to his left radiating ambition like heat. All 3 staring at Wei as if he'd announced plans to burn everything down. I'm leaving, Wei had said. Not leaving the room. Leaving the empire. His father's face had hardened into something geological. You'll never amount to anything without this family. Wei had taken nothing. No connections threaded through the city's power networks, no money beyond the modest salary he'd saved from 3 years of working in the company's algorithm division. No safety net woven from his last name's weight. He'd walked out of the Chin Tower and hadn't returned. What he hadn't told them, what he'd never told anyone, was what he'd been building in those 3 years. Late nights in the company's research division, weekends lost to code that mapped property values with predictive precision that bordered on prescient. An algorithm that could analyze urban development patterns, demographic shifts, infrastructure investment, and political maneuvering to forecast real estate trends with 97% accuracy. He'd sold it 6 months after leaving. Not to a competitor, that would have been vindictive, and Wei didn't traffic in revenge. He'd sold it to a consortium of urban planning firms who used it to build better cities rather than extract maximum profit. $340 million transferred to his account on a Tuesday morning. Wei had been eating instant noodles in his new apartment when the notification arrived. He'd spent the afternoon walking the city, thinking about his mother. She'd died when he was 19, before wealth and success had calcified the family into their current forms. Before Linda had married Richard Chun Park, the hyphenated surname a calculated merger of medical prestige and old money. Before Marcus had transformed ambition into identity. Before his father had replaced love with ledgers. His mother had made dumplings every Sunday, her hands moving through the motions with meditative precision. Fold, crimp, repeat. She'd taught Wei the rhythm, the patience, the understanding that some things couldn't be rushed. Good food, she'd said, is about attention. Not money. Attention. Wei had used 2% of the algorithm's sale to live on. The interest alone generated more than he needed. The remaining $333 million went into establishing the Horizon Foundation. Anonymous. Untraceable. Operated through shell corporations and legal structures so complex that even forensic accountants gave up following the threads. For 20 years, he'd been conducting an experiment in human nature. What would happen if he disappeared from the family narrative entirely, but kept them all from failing? Would anyone notice the safety net? Would anyone question their good fortune? Would anyone, even once, think to check on the brother, son, uncle who'd supposedly wasted his potential? Now his phone buzzed again. Margaret Chen, no relation, different Chen entirely, his assistant and the only person who knew the truth. Her message appeared in their private channel, encrypted and ephemeral. Weekly brief. Linda's mortgage, 3 months behind, covered. Marcus's crypto fund, another $2.3 million in losses, legal settlements arranged. Chelsea's tuition, processed. Your father's cardiac medication, prior authorization issues resolved. Wei typed back. Restaurant reservation confirmed, Lotus Garden. Your building. They still think you beg for employee discounts, he almost smiled. Almost. The Horizon Foundation owned the Lotus Garden, had purchased it 5 years ago when the owner's daughter needed cancer treatment and couldn't afford both the restaurant's overhead and her medical bills. The foundation covered the treatment, structured the restaurant as a sustainable business, and kept it running as neutral ground for the Chen family gatherings. His father loved the place. Thought he'd discovered it. Wei closed the philosophy book and moved to his kitchen. The grocery store 3 blocks away still sold fresh ingredients, ginger, cabbage, ground pork, scallions. He bought enough for 40 dumplings, carried them home in a recycled bag, and spent the next 3 hours working dough with his hands. Fold, crimp, repeat. Attention. Not money. Attention. The dumplings cooled on his counter, wrapped in aluminum foil and old newspapers because that's how his mother had done it. Practical. Unpretentious. Real. Wei showered in water that didn't adjust temperature based on his biometrics, dressed in his least worn shirt and the blazer with frayed cuffs, and examined himself in the mirror. 47 years old. Lean from walking instead of virtual reality fitness. Weathered from actual sun instead of UV-optimized tanning protocols. His watch was a vintage Patek Philippe he'd inherited from his mother, worth $80,000 to collectors, invisible to everyone who judged wealth by Neuralink displays and holographic interfaces. He was dressed exactly wrong for a family gathering in 2045. No smart fabrics that shifted color based on mood. No embedded tech that broadcasted his social credit score. No augmented reality accessories that painted the air around him with curated achievements. Just cloth and thread and buttons, perfect, across the city, in a glass tower that touched low-hanging clouds. Jade Martinez sat surrounded by 3 holographic displays and 1 analog conspiracy board. Red string connected printed photographs, actual photographs. Not digital projections, spanning 2 years of investigation. Shell corporations. Anonymous donations. Mysteriously resolved crises. Scholarships that appeared exactly when needed. Medical bills that vanished. Legal troubles that evaporated. The phantom donor. She'd been chasing the story for 6 months, ever since her editor had mentioned a pattern. Someone's giving away hundreds of millions, and they're a ghost. Find them. Jade had traced 47 scholarships, 12 medical research grants, 3 school reconstructions, countless individual interventions. Every thread led to dead ends, nonprofits that dissolved after single transactions, law firms that couldn't recall client names, foundation boards staffed by people who'd never met the benefactor, but there was a pattern. Every recipient connected, however distantly, to one family. The Chens of Seattle. Not the famous ones, the patriarch who'd built a real estate empire, the daughter who'd married into medical dynasty money, the son who fronted a cryptocurrency empire. Their orbits. Their children's classmates. Their parents' neighbors. Their employees' relatives. Jade's boyfriend Danny had mentioned his grandfather's birthday party casually, the way people mentioned weather. Big family thing this weekend. Want to come? Fair warning, they're intense, Danny Chen. The connection had hit her like voltage. She'd kept her face neutral, kissed him, said she'd love to meet his family. Then she'd spent 3 days diving deeper into the Chen family structure, cross-referencing every donation, every intervention, every mysteriously resolved crisis, and she'd found him. Or rather, found the absence of him. Wei Chen. 47. Left the family business 20 years ago. No social media presence. No public profile. No Neuralink signature broadcasting his location and vital signs to the city's mesh network. No holographic business card floating in professional databases. He existed in tax records and utility bills and nothing else, but 20 years ago, 6 months after leaving the Chen Empire, a property algorithm had sold for $340 million. The buyer consortium's records were public. The seller's identity was buried under corporate structures that dissolved like sugar in water. Jade had found one photograph. A man leaving a non-profit gala, face turned away, but the posture, the height, the timestamp all aligned. The event had been for a scholarship fund. The Horizon Foundation had donated $2 million that night. Now she was looking at surveillance footage from the Lotus Garden restaurant, a place the Chen family frequented. The owner's daughter had survived stage 4 lymphoma 5 years ago. Medical bills, zero. The restaurant that should have closed, still thriving. And there, in the corner of frame, a man in a worn jacket helping bus tables. Not an employee. Just someone who couldn't sit still while staff worked. Wei Chen. Her phone chimed. Danny's face appeared in holographic miniature. Hey babe, family's asking if you're vegetarian, have allergies, the usual interrogation prep. Jade smiled at his obliviousness. Sweet, comfortable Danny who worked in marketing and thought his uncle was a struggling consultant. No allergies. I eat everything. Should I bring anything? Just yourself. And maybe patience. Uncle Wei's coming, so expect some awkwardness. Family kind of treats him like, Danny paused, searching for diplomatic phrasing. Like he didn't work out. Tell me about Uncle Wei, Jade said, keeping her voice casual. He's cool, actually. Quiet. Left the family business way back. Does consulting work, I think? Lives in this tiny apartment, drives this ancient car. Everyone kind of feels sorry for him, but he seems happy. Makes these amazing dumplings every gathering. Only person who talks to him like a real person is my sister Chelsea. Jade filed every detail. Sounds interesting, he is. Just don't mention money or success or the business. Mom gets weird about it. After Danny disconnected, Jade stared at her conspiracy board. If she was right, if Wei Chen was the phantom donor, then she was about to have dinner with one of the most influential philanthropists in the Pacific Northwest, a man worth hundreds of millions, while his family offered him pity and treated him like failure. The journalist in her wanted the story. The human in her wanted to see how this played out. The part of her that had grown up poor, watching rich people mistake luck for virtue, wanted to see what happened when someone who'd actually earned their wealth sat quietly while frauds performed success. She checked her wardrobe. Professional but not too formal. Observant but not obviously investigative. She dressed for infiltration. Wei drove his 2030 Honda Civic through streets that had transformed into data streams. Cars around him piloted themselves, their passengers reclined in seats that massaged and monitored and adjusted. Neuralink traffic systems optimized flow patterns, routing vehicles around congestion before it formed. The city's infrastructure read intentions from collective biometric data and responded. Wei drove manually. Hands on wheel, foot on pedal, brain making decisions. The other driver's AI systems gave his car wide berth, their algorithms confused by unpredictability. The car wash he used was one of the last manual operations. No automated systems reading dirt composition and applying optimized cleaning protocols. Just brushes and soap and humans working for wages. Wei pulled through, paid cash, actual physical currency, and continued toward the Lotus Garden. His phone's basic GPS, no augmented reality overlay, no social suggestions, no targeted advertising based on his route, directed him through older neighborhoods where buildings predated the smart city reconstruction. These blocks still had sidewalks instead of pedestrian tubes, windows instead of adaptive display surfaces, doors that required keys. The Lotus Garden sat on a corner lot, its architecture deliberately traditional. Paper lanterns, wooden beams, a garden that grew real plants instead of holographic projections. Wei had structured the foundation's purchase to preserve exactly this, a space that refused to perform modernity. He parked between a Tesla with Neuralink synchronization and a Mercedes that probably cost more than his first apartment. The valet, young, augmented with customer service AI that painted name tags and preferences in his visual field, looked at Wei's Civic with undisguised confusion. Welcome to, the valet system clearly couldn't find Wei in its database. No profile. No preferences. No tipping history. Lotus Garden, sir, Wei handed him the keys. Real metal keys, not biometric access codes. Thank you. He retrieved the dumplings from the passenger seat, still wrapped in foil and newspaper, and walked toward the entrance. Through the windows, he could see his family already gathered. Linda in something that probably required a designer's retinal scan to purchase. Marcus with the Rolex he'd bought on credit, its Neuralink features broadcasting his success to anyone whose augmented reality accepted the feed. Chelsea and Nathan on their phones, their faces lit by private realities only they could see. His father sat at the head of the table, 70 years old and still commanding, his presence amplified by decades of people treating him like gravity. Wei pushed open the door. The temperature in the room didn't literally drop, climate control systems prevented such fluctuations, but the psychological chill was absolute. Conversation stuttered. Heads turned. Linda's smile activated like a defense system. Wei. Her voice pitched just wrong, enthusiasm masking calculation. You made it. Oh, you brought. Her eyes landed on the foil-wrapped bundle. Dumplings. How, homemade. She took them the way someone might handle evidence, passing them immediately to a server with instructions to put them somewhere. The server, who knew Wei actually owned this building and paid everyone's salary, caught his eye. Wei gave the slightest nod. The server smiled and headed toward the kitchen. Richard materialized at Linda's shoulder, his presence reinforcing hers like they'd practiced. Wei, good to see you. His eyes traveled over Wei's blazer, lingering on the frayed cuffs. You're looking comfortable. It was an insult wearing politeness like camouflage. Wei had been insulted by experts for 20 years. This barely registered. Comfortable works for me, Wei said. The family began arranging themselves for a photograph, a ritual that would be broadcast across their social networks, tagged and filtered and optimized for engagement. Linda physically positioned people, her hands on shoulders, her voice issuing directions disguised as suggestions. Wei ended up in the back corner, half out of frame, his worn blazer a visual contradiction to the designer armor surrounding him. Linda adjusted her own position. "Just need to balance the composition," she said, smiling at the camera drone hovering at eye level. The drone counted down, flashed, captured them frozen in performed happiness. Wei's expression was neutral. Present but not participating. There but not belonging. They moved to the table. The seating arrangement had been planned with tactical precision. Wei found himself at the far end, separated from the business talk by strategic placement of cousins and spouses. An empty chair waited next to him, isolated together. Dinner began. Marcus launched into a monologue about cryptocurrency markets, his words peppered with jargon that sounded impressive to anyone not tracking his fund's actual performance. Nathan one-upped him with details about his new job at a tech startup. Stock options and equity percentages delivered like proof of worth. Chelsea mentioned her Ivy League acceptance, the scholarship that covered full tuition presented as evidence of merit rather than mysterious intervention. "Uncle Wei," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the table's conversation zones. "You still doing that? What was it? Consulting thing?" Everyone's attention pivoted. Wei felt the weight of their collective curiosity, the underlying question they couldn't voice directly. "Are you still failing?" "I keep busy," Wei said. Right. Marcus leaned forward, his Rolex catching light in a way its designers had specifically engineered. "Hey, I've been thinking, you should let me help you out. I've got this ground floor opportunity, crypto-based, revolutionary protocol. Really simple stuff, I can explain it slow," Linda interrupted, her concern weaponized. "Marcus, not everyone is cut out for high-risk investments. Wei probably prefers stability." She pronounced stability like it was a terminal diagnosis. Chelsea's voice cut through the condescension, young and unfiltered. "Uncle Wei, random question, do you still live in that same apartment? With inflation and rent going up and everything, can you still afford it?" Silence crystallized around the table. Even by their standards of casual cruelty, it was too direct. Some cousins studied their plates. Nathan's girlfriend looked uncomfortable. Wei's father said nothing, his lack of intervention functioning as approval. Wei met Chelsea's eyes. She wasn't being malicious. She genuinely worried. "That somehow made it worse." "I manage," Wei said. Linda seized the opening. "Well, if you ever need help, we're family. In fact, I've been meaning to talk to you. Richard's hospital is hiring in the cafeteria. Union benefits, steady hours, good people. I could put in a word." The offer hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Cafeteria work. For a man who'd helped build the algorithm that revolutionized urban development. For a man who'd just approved Chelsea's tuition payment that morning. For a man who owned the building they were sitting in. Wei prepared to respond with the same deflection he'd used for 20 years. Then the door opened, a woman entered, slightly breathless, professional but flustered. "Sorry I'm late, work call ran long." Danny jumped up, his face transforming with the uncomplicated happiness of someone who hadn't learned to perform emotions yet. "Babe. Everyone, this is Jade." "Jade, this is the chaos I warned you about." Jade Martinez moved around the table, shaking hands, smiling, making appropriate noises. Professional charm wrapped around journalist calculation. Wei watched her work the room. Tracking the subtle tells, the way her eyes lingered on details, the questions she asked that probed without seeming to, the assessment happening behind her warmth. Then her eyes landed on him. She froze for exactly half a second. Recognition flared in her expression before discipline crushed it flat. Her eyes widened fractionally. Shell corporations, foundation addresses, that single blurry photograph from the gala, all clicking into alignment. Wei held her gaze and gave the smallest head shake. A millimeter of movement. A message, not yet, Jade caught it. Her professional mask smoothed back into place so seamlessly that no one else noticed the momentary disruption. Nice to meet you all, she said, her voice steady. Danny's told me so much about the family. She sat in the empty chair next to Wei. The energy in the room shifted like atmospheric pressure changing before a storm. Wei could feel her presence, sharp, curious, dangerous in ways his family couldn't recognize. The server returned with Wei's dumplings, arranged them on a plate at the table's center like any other dish. Linda glanced at them dismissively. Marcus ignored them entirely. The conversation resumed its performance of success, wealth, and certainty, but next to Wei, Jade Martinez sat very still, and he could feel her watching him with the focused attention of someone who'd just found exactly what they'd been searching for. The game had changed. Wei just wasn't sure yet whether that meant everything was about to collapse or finally begin. Appetizers arrived on plates that adjusted temperature based on optimal consumption windows, seared scallops that maintained precise heat through embedded thermal regulation. The servers moved with choreographed efficiency, their Neuralink earpieces receiving instructions from the kitchen's AI coordination system. Wei watched the performance with detached appreciation. He'd paid for the restaurant's infrastructure upgrade 3 years ago when the old owner couldn't afford the city's mandatory smart system compliance. Jade lifted her fork, but her attention never left her phone. Under the table, hidden from casual observation, she scrolled through research images with practiced subtlety. Wei could see the screen's reflection in her water glass, photographs, documents, the digital trail she'd been following for months. Her jaw tightened fractionally. Recognition confirmed, the table conversation had fragmented into competing performances. Marcus held court at the center, his voice pitched to Carrie, describing his cryptocurrency fund's revolutionary protocol with the confidence of someone who'd memorized talking points without understanding the underlying mathematics. Nathan nodded along, his Neuralink watch projecting holographic charts into his peripheral vision. Data he pretended to analyze. Linda orchestrated the social dynamics like a conductor, redirecting conversations, smoothing tensions, ensuring everyone performed their assigned roles. Wei existed in the gaps between their performances. Present but peripheral. There but dismissed, Jade leaned closer, her voice pitched low enough that only he could hear beneath the table's ambient noise. So, Wei, can I call you Wei? Most people do, he said. Danny mentioned you left the family business a while back. She cut a scallop with surgical precision. What made you take that leap? Wei met her eyes. Intelligence looked back at him, sharp and assessing. She already knew the answer. This was a test. He appreciated the directness. I wanted to see what I could build on my own. And what did you build? Enough. Her smile contained layers. Amusement. Curiosity. Challenge. That's cryptic. What kind of consulting do you do? Problem solving, mostly. Helping organizations find funding, connect resources. Wei sipped water from a glass that monitored his hydration levels and adjusted the table's environmental controls accordingly. Technology performing care. It's quiet work, quiet work. Jade repeated the phrase like she was tasting it. I like that. Must be rewarding, more than you'd think. Something shifted in her expression. Certainty crystallizing. Wei could see her mental calculations, the journalist's instinct assembling disparate facts into coherent narrative. She was 90% sure now. Maybe 95, Marcus's voice cut through their exchange, too loud and too friendly. Uncle Wei, I couldn't help but overhear. He hadn't been listening. He'd been monitoring the table for opportunities to demonstrate expertise. Listen, consulting is great and all, but have you thought about real wealth? I'm talking passive income. I'm talking freedom. Wei set down his fork. Here it came. The same pitch Marcus delivered to anyone who made eye contact too long. Desperation wearing confidence like camouflage, Marcus activated his phone's holographic display, projecting cryptocurrency charts into the air between them. See this? This is life-changing money. Blockchain Protocol 7.0, completely decentralized, quantum-resistant, backed by actual utility tokens. He spoke slowly, enunciating each word like Wei might struggle with the concepts. I could get you in on the ground floor. Small investment, maybe 5-10 grand. I know that might be a stretch on a consulting budget, but think of it as, I appreciate the offer, Marcus. Wei's voice remained level. Neutral. Giving nothing away, just think about it. Marcus leaned forward, his Rolex catching light in that specific engineered way, its neural link broadcasting his success metrics to anyone whose augmented reality accepted the feed. Because, real talk? At your age, you need to start thinking about retirement. Social Security isn't going to cut it, you know? And consulting work, that's not exactly building wealth. Jade's hand tightened on her fork. Wei could feel her anger radiating like heat. She was furious on his behalf, which was interesting. Most people either didn't notice the condescension or considered it justified. Wei simply nodded. I'll keep it in mind. What Marcus didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Wei had reviewed Marcus's cryptocurrency fund's actual performance that morning. 2.3 million in losses. Investor lawsuits pending. Legal exposure that could mean federal prison time. Wei's foundation had already retained the law firm that would quietly settle everything, structure the repayments, and keep Marcus out of handcuffs. The invoice sat in Margaret's queue, awaiting Wei's approval. He'd probably approve it Tuesday. After tonight, Linda had been tracking their conversation with the vigilance of someone monitoring potential threats. Her discomfort manifested in rapid-fire topic changes. Jade, you must tell us about your work. Her voice pitched bright and hard. Forbes, how exciting. Danny mentioned you're doing investigative journalism? What are you working on? Jade set down her fork with deliberate care. Wei recognized the journalist's calculation, how much to reveal, how much to withhold, what information served as bait. I'm profiling some interesting philanthropists. People who give back quietly, without recognition. How wonderful. Linda's enthusiasm contained sharp edges. We actually do quite a bit of charity ourselves. Richard's Hospital Foundation has raised, how much was it last year, dear? Richard straightened, sliding seamlessly into his public persona. Just over 2 million for cardiac research. Essential work, really. We've made significant breakthroughs in. Marcus has his cryptocurrency literacy program, Linda continued, conducting the family's accomplishments like an orchestra. Teaching underserved communities about digital finance. Wei knew the program existed mostly on paper, a tax write-off structure his foundation had helped Marcus's accountant design to offset the crypto fund's losses, and Chelsea's been volunteering at the Children's Hospital, Linda added. Such important work. Chelsea looked up from her phone, startled to be included in the performance. I just read to kids, Mom. It's not, don't diminish it, sweetheart. Linda's smile was encouragement and warning simultaneously. Jade, Wei could actually benefit from Marcus's crypto program. Financial literacy is so important, especially for people who haven't had exposure to wealth-building strategies. The table laughed. Polite, performative sound. Richard laughed. Nathan laughed. Even some cousins whose names Wei barely remembered joined in. Shared amusement at his expense, bonding through collective superiority. Wei didn't laugh. He finished his scallop, watched them perform their certainty, and thought about his mother. She'd never laughed at people. Only with them. Main courses arrived, protein printed to molecular perfection, vegetables grown in vertical farms with optimized nutrient profiles, presentation designed by algorithms analyzing thousands of aesthetic preference data points. The food was technically perfect. Emotionally empty, Wei's dumplings appeared on a small side plate, almost apologetic in their handmade imperfection. Linda made a show of serving herself one, her movements exaggerated for the table's benefit. Oh. She held the dumpling like evidence. These are interesting. Wei, did you use pork? I'm trying to cut back on red meat. Biometric tracker says my inflammation markers are elevated, but. Well, I suppose once won't hurt. She took the smallest possible bite, chewed twice, swallowed like she was taking medicine. Her Neuralink health monitor probably logged it immediately, categorizing macronutrients and flagging dietary deviations. Chelsea reached for a dumpling with genuine interest. Are these the same ones Grandma used to make? I remember Uncle Wei always helped her in the kitchen. The comment landed like sunlight breaking through clouds. Wei looked at his niece, 22 years old, Ivy League scholarship recipient, one of the few family members who still looked at him like he was a person rather than a cautionary tale. She remembered. Through 20 years of carefully cultivated family narrative about his failure. She remembered Sunday afternoons in his mother's kitchen, flour on the counters, the rhythm of folding and crimping. Wei smiled. Actually smiled. Same recipe. She'd be happy someone remembers. Nathan, Chelsea's brother, barely glanced up from his phone. Dude, why don't you just buy dumplings? Seems like a lot of work. The moment shattered. Wei's smile faded. Chelsea's face fell. The table moved on, the brief connection dismissed as irrelevant to the evening's true purpose, performing success, reinforcing hierarchy, maintaining the family's carefully constructed social architecture. Jade was watching him. Wei could feel her attention like physical pressure. When he glanced her direction, she met his eyes with an expression he couldn't quite decode. Anger, yes. But also something else. Respect, maybe. Recognition that he'd just endured something cruel and responded with grace. She leaned closer again, and this time her voice carried deliberate warmth. I think homemade is impressive. It shows patience. Attention to detail. Those are rare qualities. Wei turned to face her properly. Some things are worth taking time with, I agree. Jade's smile contained edges now. She was playing a game, but Wei wasn't sure yet what the rules were. Like investigations. Or getting to know someone. Surface impressions can be so misleading. Very true. Wei felt the conversation's undercurrent. The double meaning in every phrase. Sometimes the most interesting people are the ones everyone overlooks, or the ones who want to be overlooked. The air between them changed. Charged. Electric. Wei had spent 20 years being invisible, but Jade was looking at him like he was the only person in the room. Like she saw through the worn jacket and frayed cuffs to something underneath. Not his money, that was just a fact she'd discovered. Something else. The choice to remain hidden. The discipline to endure condescension. The experiment he'd been running. Danny, oblivious to the tension building 2 feet from his face, was arguing with Marcus about cryptocurrency volatility. Linda was watching Jade and Wei with increasing concern. Richard was describing his latest research paper to anyone who'd listen. The table fractured into competing conversations, everyone performing for invisible audiences beyond the room, their social feeds, their professional networks, the nebulous concept of people who matter. Jade pushed back from the table. Excuse me. Restroom. She stood with fluid grace, smiled at the table generally, and walked toward the back hallway. Wei watched her go, then returned to his dumplings. 3 people had tried them. 37 remained. His mother would have been disappointed by the waste. 5 minutes passed. Wei stood. Excuse me. No one acknowledged him leaving. The hallway leading to the restrooms was deliberately designed to feel transitional: soft lighting, sound-dampening walls, the ambient music that played everywhere in public spaces reduced to barely perceptible background frequency. Wei walked toward the men's room, his mind already cataloging the evening's humiliations, ranking them by creative cruelty. Then he heard Jade's voice. She stood near the private dining room entrance, phone to her ear, speaking in her normal professional tone. Not whispering. Not hiding. The acoustics in this hallway carried sound back toward the dining rooms, an architectural oversight Wei had noticed but never corrected. Some conversations deserve to be overheard. No, I'm at dinner with the Chen family right now. Jade's voice held restrained excitement. Yes, the Chen family. I can't talk long, but I think I found him. Wei stopped walking. Stood perfectly still. The phantom donor investigation. I'm almost certain. She paused, listening. No, they have no idea who he is. He's sitting at the table being offered a cafeteria job while his sister thanks him for homemade dumplings like he's a charity case. Another pause. Jade turned slightly, her free hand gesturing as she spoke. The person who's funded 47 scholarships, 12 medical research grants, 3 school rebuilds, estimated worth over 400 million in charitable giving alone. Her voice carried on now, professional detachment cracking to reveal genuine emotion. No face, no name, just a paper trail that all leads back to this family. Every scholarship recipient, every grant beneficiary, every mysteriously resolved crisis, all connected to the Chens. Wei should have continued to the restroom. Should have maintained his cover, preserved the experiment's integrity for whatever remained of the evening. Instead, he spoke. You're not subtle. Jade spun, phone dropping from her ear. Her editor's voice continued speaking, tinny and distant. She disconnected the call with reflexive speed, her face cycling through surprise, embarrassment, calculation, and finally settling on defiance. Neither are you. She gestured at his jacket. That has a hole in the sleeve, but your watch, most people wouldn't notice, but it's a Patek Philippe. Vintage. Worth about $80,000. You're wearing a disguise. Wei glanced at his watch. His mother's watch. The only piece of jewelry he owned. It's not a disguise. It's just easier. Easier than what? The question hung between them. Wei could deflect. Could maintain the facade for a few more hours, let the evening play out as planned, preserve the experiment's purity. But he was tired. 20 years of being invisible had worn grooves in his soul, easier than being loved for the wrong reasons. The words emerged unbidden. More honest than he'd intended. I wanted to know, for 20 years, if any of them would value me without it. Tonight answered that question. Jade stepped closer. The hallway's soft lighting painted her face in angles and shadows. So what happens now? What do you want to happen, journalistically? Her smile was sharp. I want the story. This is career-making. The phantom donor revealed. Exclusive interview, full background, the human interest angle of a man who gave away hundreds of millions while his own family treated him like failure, and personally, she moved closer still. Wei could smell her perfume now, something subtle and expensive, the kind of scent that cost more than his monthly rent. Personally, I want to know why a man worth hundreds of millions sits there and lets his nephew pitch him crypto scams. Wei leaned against the wall. The exhaustion he'd been holding at bay for hours settled into his bones. Because Marcus is drowning. His fund lost 2.3 million of other people's money. If I don't cover it quietly, he goes to prison. Federal charges. His wife would leave him. His kids would grow up visiting their father through security glass. So I let him feel like a big shot while I clean up his mess. And your sister? Offering you a cafeteria job, Linda's been drowning in debt for 3 years. The mansion, the lifestyle, it's all leveraged. Credit stacked on credit stacked on credit. Her husband's research grant? The one that saved his career 5 years ago? I funded it. 1.2 million. Chelsea's tuition? 280,000, ongoing. But they can't know, because then it becomes about the money. Then I'm not Wei who failed. I'm Wei who has power. And power changes everything. Jade's expression shifted. The journalist's calculations softened into something more human. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard, or the most honest experiment in human nature ever conducted. Wei pushed off the wall. I wanted to know what I was worth without the money. Turns out, not much. That's not true. Isn't it? You saw them. 20 years of anonymous support, and the first time I show up without broadcasting wealth, they offer me a cafeteria job. They pitch me crypto scams. They seat me in the back of family photos. They laugh when someone suggests I need financial literacy training. Jade stood close enough now that Wei could feel her warmth. The hallway's ambient temperature control system adjusted automatically, compensating for their combined body heat. Technology performing intimacy, they're idiots, Jade said flatly. And they're missing the best person at that table. The comment landed like a punch to his chest. Wei had endured condescension, dismissal, and casual cruelty for 2 decades. He'd built immunity to insults. But kindness, genuine, unearned kindness from someone who actually saw him, that he had no defense against. You don't know me, he managed. I know you spent 3 hours making dumplings for people who won't eat them. I know you've been funding your family's lives while they treat you like you're failing. I know you wore your mother's watch and your oldest jacket to a black-tie dinner because you wanted to see if anyone would value you anyway. She held his gaze. I know enough. They stood close in the hallway. Not quite touching. The moment balanced on the edge of something Wei couldn't name. Not romance, too complicated, too fast. But connection. Recognition. 2 people seeing each other clearly in a world designed for performance and deception. I have to go back in there and not blow your cover, don't I? Jade's voice softened. Wei considered the question. Considered the experiment. Considered 20 years of careful anonymity. Only if you want to. I'm tired, Jade. 20 years is a long time to be invisible. Her hand found his. Brief contact, warm and deliberate. Then let's end it. They returned to the dining room together. The conversation had continued without them, the family ecosystem absorbing their absence without disruption. Linda was mid-announcement when they entered, her voice pitched for maximum impact. And so I've arranged everything. She beamed at Wei with practiced concern. Wei, Richard's hospital is hiring for cafeteria management. It's a step up from line service. Union benefits, health insurance, retirement matching. The interview is Tuesday at 9 a.m. I've already put in a good word. The table went quiet. Even by their standards, the condescension was remarkable. Chelsea looked mortified. Nathan studied his phone with sudden intensity. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Wei's father said nothing, his silence functioning as approval. Richard nodded supportively. It's really a great opportunity, Wei. Stable work, good people. The cafeteria manager just retired after 30 years, pension. Benefits, the whole package. That kind of security is valuable. Chelsea found her voice. Mom, maybe Uncle Wei doesn't want, sweetheart, sometimes we have to help family make good decisions. Linda's tone suggested she was performing kindness, doing difficult but necessary work. Wei, I know pride can get in the way, but at your age, you need to think practically. Consulting work is unpredictable. This is steady. Safe, Wei sat down slowly. Jade sat next to him, and under the table, her hand briefly touched his. Support. Solidarity. Permission, that's very thoughtful, Linda, Wei said. Relief flooded Linda's face. Oh good. I was worried you'd be stubborn about it. Pride comes before a fall. As they say. The interview's Tuesday morning. I'll text you the details. And don't worry about what to wear, business casual is fine. You don't need a suit, the table relaxed. Crisis averted. The family member who refused to succeed could be absorbed into useful employment. Linda had performed her duty. Richard had demonstrated connections. Everyone could feel good about helping. Then Jade's phone rang. She looked at the screen, then at Wei. Her expression asked a question. Wei gave the smallest nod. Permission. Ending, Jade answered on speaker. Hi, Michael. Her editor's voice filled the space, professional and urgent. No, it's fine, I'm just at dinner. What? Oh. Oh wow. You're sure? The table's attention pivoted. Conversations died. Everyone watched Jade's face as she listened to words they couldn't hear. All of it? Jade's voice carried manufactured shock. She was performing now, but the underlying emotion was real. Cross-referenced and verified? You're absolutely certain, she disconnected. Sat very still. The table waited, Danny leaned toward her. Babe, you okay? Jade looked around the table, letting the tension build. The journalist in her understood timing. That was my editor. They just cross-referenced the foundation documents. The phantom donor investigation I've been working on. They found him. Linda's interest sharpened despite herself. Found who? The anonymous donor I've been tracking for 6 months. Jade's voice gained momentum. The one who's given away over $400 million. Funded 47 scholarships, 12 medical research grants, rebuilt 3 schools. All anonymously. No press releases, no naming rights, no recognition. Just money appearing exactly when people needed it. Marcus frowned. What's that got to do with dinner? Jade looked directly at Wei. Held his gaze. Asked one final silent question. He nodded again, because every single recipient has a connection to the Chin family. She let the words land. Every scholarship, every grant, every mysteriously resolved crisis. Chelsea's Ivy League tuition. Richard's cardiac research funding. Marcus's legal settlements. The Lotus Gardens infrastructure upgrade. Your father's medical bills. All of it traces back through shell corporations and legal structures to one source. The table went absolutely quiet. Wei could hear the restaurant's ambient systems, air circulation, temperature regulation, the subtle hum of technology maintaining comfort. The foundation is headquartered in Seattle, Jade continued. Same city. Same connections. The Horizon Foundation. And its sole benefactor, the person who's been anonymously supporting this entire family for 20 years while you offered him cafeteria jobs and crypto advice. She paused. He's sitting at this table, every eye turned to Wei. His father's face had gone pale. Linda looked like she'd been struck. Marcus's expression cycled through confusion, disbelief, and dawning horror. Chelsea's hand covered her mouth. Wei sat very still, feeling the weight of their attention like physical pressure. 20 years of invisibility ending in a single moment. The experiment concluded. Results definitive. Hi everyone, he said quietly. We should probably talk. Linda's laugh emerged too high, too bright, fracturing the silence like glass breaking. Well, that's quite a coincidence. Jade didn't laugh. She pulled out her phone, her fingers moving with practiced efficiency across the holographic interface. That's what I thought. Until I traced the corporation chain. Until I matched the timelines. She projected data into the air above the table: financial records, foundation documents, interconnected networks of shell corporations glowing like neural pathways. Chelsea, you got a scholarship from the Horizon Foundation, right? Full ride. Chelsea had gone very still, her Neuralink health monitor probably registering elevated heart rate, stress hormones flooding her system. Yeah, how did you, and Richard, your cardiac research grant 5 years ago? Jade's voice remained steady, journalistic precision cutting through the table's growing tension. When the hospital was going to cut funding. The anonymous donor who saved your project, Richard's face had lost color. His augmented reality contacts probably couldn't find talking points for this scenario. We assumed it was the board making budget adjustments. It wasn't. Jade swiped through more documents, projecting financial transfers with forensic clarity. Marcus, 2 years ago, when your crypto fund nearly went bankrupt and you faced investor lawsuits. You said your lawyer was just that good. Marcus had gone pale, his Rolex suddenly too heavy on his wrist. The device that had been broadcasting his success metrics to the room now felt like evidence of fraud. The settlement was paid anonymously. All $2.3 million. Jade's fingers danced through the data. And this restaurant, Lotus Garden. Danny, you said your family has been coming here for years, right? Even when the owner said they were closing down 5 years ago, they somehow stayed open. Danny looked confused, glancing between his girlfriend and his uncle. Yeah, Uncle Wei knows someone here, gets us a discount. Wei closed his eyes. 20 years of carefully constructed invisibility collapsing in real time. He could feel the weight of their attention shifting, the family's collective understanding beginning to reconstruct itself around new information. I don't know someone here, Danny. Wei's voice emerged quiet but clear. I own the building. The silence that followed had texture. Wait. Linda's mouth opened but no sound emerged. Marcus's hand had frozen halfway to his water glass. Even the restaurant's ambient system seemed to pause, the soft background music fading to nothing. What? Linda finally managed. Wei pulled out his phone, the basic model without Neuralink integration, without holographic projection capabilities, without any of the augmented reality features that transformed communication into performance. He opened a text thread labeled Family Fund Manager and turned the screen so the table could see. The messages scrolled past. Chelsea spring semester tuition processed. Marcus's legal settlement finalized. Richard's research grant extension approved. Parents' retirement home down payment completed. And the most recent, sent 2 hours ago, Linda is announcing a cafeteria job for me tonight. Maybe it's time to redirect her annual allocation to literacy programs instead? Wei stood slowly. For the first time all evening, the room's attention focused on him not as background element but as primary subject. He walked around the table with deliberate steps, his worn shoes quiet against the restaurant's smart flooring that adjusted cushioning based on gait patterns. 20 years ago, I left the family business with nothing. His voice carried without amplification, filling the space that had swallowed him all evening. Dad said I'd never amount to anything. So I wanted to see what I could build alone. His father sat rigid at the table's head, his face unreadable. 70 years of commanding rooms, controlling narratives, defining success. Now silent. I built a property tech algorithm. Predictive modeling that could forecast real estate trends with 97% accuracy. Sold it for $340 million. Wei paused, letting the number land. I could have come back then, thrown it in everyone's faces. But I wanted to run a different experiment. Linda found her voice, though it emerged strangled. What experiment? I wanted to know if any of you would love me without the money. If family meant more than net worth. Wei gestured at his worn jacket, his frayed cuffs. So I lived modestly, not because I had to, but because I chose to. And I watched. Marcus stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You've been watching us? For 20 years, I'd been helping you for 20 years, Marcus. Wei's tone remained level, but something harder moved underneath. Anonymously. Every time one of you got into trouble, needed funding, faced disaster, I was there. But I never told you because I wanted to see, would anyone check on me? Would anyone value me for being Wei, not for being useful? He activated the restaurant's display system, because he owned it, because the building's infrastructure answered to his foundation's control protocols. Financial documents materialized on the walls, holographic projections painting the private dining room with evidence. Chelsea, your Ivy League scholarship. $280,000 total. The Horizon Foundation, that's my foundation. Wei watched his niece's face crumble, tears forming. I'm proud of you, by the way. Your grades earned that scholarship. I just made sure money wasn't an obstacle. Chelsea's hands covered her face. Her brother Nathan put an arm around her shoulders, his own expression shocked into something approaching humanity. Marcus, your crypto fund. Wei pulled up more documents. When you lost investor money and faced federal prison time, I covered it. 2.3 million in settlements. Your brilliant lawyer? I paid him 500,000 to take the case and structure deals that kept you out of handcuffs. Marcus looked like he might vomit. His Rolex had stopped broadcasting. Or maybe he'd manually disabled it. Either way, the performance had ended. Richard, your cardiac research. When the hospital was going to kill the project, you got a $1.2 million anonymous grant. That was me. The research that made your career, that earned you department chair, that saved your reputation? I funded it. Richard couldn't meet his eyes. The surgeon's hands, steady enough to operate on hearts, trembled against the table. Linda, your lifestyle. Wei's voice softened fractionally. Not kindness. Sadness. The mansion you're 3 months behind on payments for? I've been covering the difference between what you can afford and what you spend for 2 years. $180,000 so far. The image you project to your social network, the performance of success? I've been funding it. Linda's face cycled through red to white to gray. Her neural link probably couldn't parse the appropriate emotional response. Shock. Humiliation. Anger. Gratitude. All competing for space in her expression. Mom and Dad's retirement home. The down payment you all claimed to split? Wei turned toward his parents. His mother would have been 72 now if she'd lived. His father looked ancient suddenly, diminished. I paid $400,000. The whole thing. His father's hands, still strong despite age, gripped the table's edge. Dad, last year when you had emergency surgery and Medicare didn't cover it all. That $200,000 bill you thought was adjusted by the hospital's billing department? Wei's voice dropped. I paid it. While you were recovering, posting about healthcare reform on your social feeds, I was transferring money to keep you alive. The patriarch of the Chen family looked old for the first time Wei could remember. Not elderly, old. Worn. Reduced. Linda found her voice, defensive instinct overriding shock. So what, you've been playing God? Deciding who deserves help? Manipulating us? No, Linda. Wei's exhaustion bled through now. 20 years of performance collapsing. I've been being family. Real family. The kind that helps when people need it, that doesn't keep score, that doesn't demand gratitude or recognition. Then why the secrecy? Why the games? Because I needed to know. The words emerged raw, stripped of deflection. For my own peace of mind. If I'd told you, every interaction would have been tainted. You'd have treated me differently, not because you loved me, but because you needed me. He looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes in turn. And tonight? Tonight I got my answer. You offered me a cafeteria job. You pitched me crypto scams like I was a mark. You seated me in the back of the family photo like I was embarrassing. After everything, 20 years of me literally funding your lives, you looked at my worn jacket and decided I was a failure. Marcus stood fully now, anger replacing shock. That's not fair. How were we supposed to know? You chose to lie to us. I didn't lie. I just didn't advertise. There's a difference. You let me pitch you crypto. You sat there while I condescended to you about wealth. Marcus's voice rose, drawing attention from nearby tables in the restaurant's main dining area. Yes, Marcus. I did. Wei's calm was absolute. Because I wanted to see if you'd treat me with respect regardless. You didn't. And honestly? That tells me everything. Chelsea's voice emerged broken. Tears streaming down her face. Her makeup, applied with algorithmic precision earlier, ran in dark streams. Uncle Wei, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Wei's expression softened. You were the only one who said anything kind tonight, Chelsea. You remembered the dumplings. You remembered Grandma. That's why your scholarship continues. You saw past the surface. Linda grasped at control slipping through her fingers. So, what? You're cutting us off? Is that it? This is revenge? No. Wei shook his head. Revenge would be easy. I'm not cutting you off. All your scholarships, grants, support, they continue. Because despite everything, you're still family. But I'm done being invisible. I'm done being pitted. And I'm done pretending. He turned to face his father directly. The old man who'd built an empire, who'd defined success in concrete terms, who'd dismissed his son as failure. You said I'd never amount to anything without this family. I amounted to more than all of you combined. But it was hollow because the people I wanted to share it with couldn't see past their own assumptions. His father's voice emerged hoarse, diminished. Wei, don't. Wei held up a hand. 20 years. You had 20 years to ask how I was doing. To check if I needed help. To see me as something other than the son who disappointed you. You didn't. None of you did. Jade had been watching everything with tears streaming down her face. Professional detachment abandoned. Just human emotion, raw and real. Wei turned to her, and his expression shifted. Opened, you figured it out in 20 minutes, she smiled through tears. Closer to 10, actually. Why didn't you say something earlier? Because I wanted to see if you'd tell them yourself. And because. She stood, moved closer. Because I wanted to see if you'd still make dumplings for people who treat you like this. Anyone can be kind when they're respected. You were kind when you were invisible. That's incredible. Wei crossed to her. In front of his entire family, their social feeds, their judgment, their shock, he took her hand. The gesture was simple. Deliberate. Revolutionary. You asked me earlier what happens now. I think I'd like to find out. No more hiding. No more experiments. Just, real. Jade's fingers interlaced with his. I still have to write the story, I know, but maybe we can negotiate terms? Over dinner? Just dinner? Wei felt something unclenching in his chest. 20 years of tension releasing. Well, I'm very thorough with my research. It might take several dinners, I'm a very private person. It might take even more than that to get the full story. Are you flirting with me? Jade stepped closer, her voice dropping to something intimate despite their audience. Is it working? Incredibly well. they stood inches apart now. The restaurant's ambient systems adjusted lighting automatically, creating focal points, dramatic shadows. Technology performing romance. But the emotion underneath was real. Danny, watching his uncle and girlfriend with dawning understanding, looked confused but also genuinely happy. Did Uncle Wei just get a date by being secretly rich? Wei smiled, actually smiled, the expression transforming his entire face. No, Danny. I got a date by being interesting. The money just means I can afford better dumplings for our next meeting. Jade laughed, the sound bright and unguarded. Then, in a moment that surprised everyone including Wei, she kissed him. Brief but electric. A promise of something real beginning. The table erupted in various reactions, gasps, uncomfortable shifting. Nathan's whispered "holy shit." When they separated, Wei turned back to his family. The patriarch pulled out his wallet, real leather, containing actual cash alongside payment chips and Neuralink credentials, and set bills on the table. Enough to cover the meal he technically owned, dinner's covered. I have a board meeting tomorrow morning, Children's Hospital expansion, $50 million commitment. He looked at Marcus. Your crypto education program? If you want to do something legitimate, I'll fund it. Real financial literacy for underserved communities. But you run it honestly. No performance. No shortcuts. Real work that helps real people. Marcus nodded, speechless. Chelsea, keep your scholarship. But pay it forward someday. Richard, your research continues. Dad, your care continues. Linda. Wei paused, looking at his sister. Really looking. Seeing past the designer armor to the frightened person underneath. Linda, I'm not angry. I'm just done being your pity project. I'll keep supporting you, but I need you to see me. Really see me. Linda was crying now, mascara running, the perfect image cracking. I'm sorry. Wei, I'm so sorry. I thought I was helping, I know. Wei's voice softened. That's what made it worse. He took Jade's hand and turned toward the exit. She stopped, pulled back slightly. Wait. Your dumplings. The ones they didn't eat. Wei looked at the table where most of his handmade dumplings sat untouched on their serving plate. 3 hours of work. His mother's recipe. Attention and care rendered in flour and filling. Jade walked over, took the entire plate. These are coming with us. They left the lotus garden together, Wei in his worn jacket, Jade carrying dumplings, Danny trailing behind them with questions forming. The family sat in stunned silence, their neural links probably exploding with notifications, social feeds updating, the performance of their lives interrupted by reality. 6 months passed like pages turning. The Forbes article dropped on a Tuesday morning. The Phantom Donor, How One Man Gave Away $400 million and Almost Nobody Knew His Name by Jade Martinez. The accompanying photograph showed Wei and Jade in his penthouse apartment, minimalist by design, not necessity, sitting at a simple table making dumplings together. He wore the same worn jacket. She wore one of his t-shirts. They were laughing. The article revealed everything. The algorithm. The fortune. The 20-year experiment in human nature. But it also revealed Wei's announcement, transitioning from anonymous giving to active philanthropy. A new foundation teaching financial literacy and emotional intelligence to families. The goal, helping people understand that love and worth couldn't be measured in dollars or social credit scores or Neuralink status broadcasts. Wei's penthouse occupied the 47th floor of a building his foundation owned. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city spreading below, its neural networks pulsing with data streams visible to anyone with augmented reality enabled. Wei kept his systems off. Preferred seeing the city as it actually was, concrete and glass and human stories hidden in lit windows. Jade stood at the kitchen counter, her hands working through dumpling dough with improving skill. Wei moved beside her, his movements automatic after decades of practice. They worked in comfortable silence, the kind that developed between people who'd stopped performing. "So, do you regret it?" Jade asked finally. The 20 years of hiding. Wei considered the question while folding a dumpling with practiced precision. "I regret that it took so long to get my answer. But no, I don't regret learning who people really are, and us?" She glanced at him, flour dusting her cheek. "If you hadn't been hiding, we might never have met, that's true. Danny would never have brought a Forbes journalist to a family dinner if they knew I was worth finding." Wei smiled. "Although I like to think we would have found each other eventually." "You're very persistent." She laughed, tossed flour at him. He retaliated. It escalated into playful chaos, flour coating surfaces, hands finding wastes, laughter filling spaces that had been empty too long. They ended up against the kitchen counter, covered in flour, kissing with the kind of intensity that came from finally being seen. "I need to maintain journalistic objectivity," Jade said breathlessly. "How's that working out?" "Terribly. I'm completely compromised." "Good." They kissed again, deeper. The city lights spread behind them through the windows, millions of people performing success, broadcasting status, chasing validation through technology that promised connection but delivered isolation. Wei had stepped outside that system. Found something real in the gaps between performances. His phone buzzed. A text from Chelsea. "Thank you for everything, Uncle Wei. Not just the money. For showing us what really matters. We're trying to be better. Love you." Wei showed Jade. She smiled, leaning into him. "See? People can change, some people. When they're ready." "Do you think your dad will ever apologize?" "Really apologize?" Wei considered. His father had been silent since the dinner. No calls. No messages. The patriarch struggling with the revelation that his greatest success had been the son he'd dismissed. "Maybe. Maybe not. But I don't need it anymore. I proved what I needed to prove, to him. But mostly to myself." Jade's head rested against his shoulder. They stood at the window watching the city's evening transformation, buildings lighting up, neural networks glowing, the future unfolding in real time. "So what's next for the phantom donor who's not so phantom anymore?" "Well, there's a reporter I'm very interested in getting to know better." Wei's arms wrapped around her waist. "She's smart, persistent, and she has this way of seeing through everything. She sounds annoying, she's perfect." The city sprawled below them. Somewhere in those lit windows, families gathered around tables. Some performing success. Some actually living it. Wei had spent 20 years learning the difference. Now he stood with someone who understood that difference intuitively, who'd looked past worn jackets and frayed cuffs to see the person underneath. On the counter, fresh dumplings waited. Made together this time. Attention and care, and something neither of them could have predicted 6 months ago when Jade walked into a family dinner chasing a story and found something more valuable than any headline. Wei's phone buzzed again. Margaret's message. "Morning brief ready when you are. New scholarship applications, medical grant requests, and Linda wants to meet for coffee. Says she wants to apologize properly." He typed back. "Schedule it." "And Margaret?" "Thank you. For everything. That's what family does, boss. Even the family we choose." Wei smiled, set the phone down, and turned back to Jade. She was already working on the next batch of dumplings, her movements confident now. Learning the rhythm. The patience. Understanding that some things were worth taking time with. The experiment had concluded. results definitive. But the real work, the work of being seen, being known, being valued for reasons beyond wealth or status, that work was just beginning. And for the first time in 20 years, Wei Chen wasn't facing it alone.